Hi, and welcome to the latest NSPCC Learning Podcast. This is the second of two episodes recorded last month, September 2021, that focuses on neglect. Dawn Hodson, the NSPCC's Associate Head of Development, spoke with Mandy Tamborini-Moore, a family support worker for Liverpool Children's Services, Lisa Shannon, the Graded Care Coordinator from Stockton-on-Tees Borough Council, and Sharon Graham, an Early Help Manager at Shropshire Council. In this episode, Dawn, Mandy, Lisa and Sharon discuss why neglect happens, how it's vital to keep children at the forefront when working with families, what can be done to help parents when there is neglect, and the importance of early intervention. All of the professionals share their advice, tips and solutions when working with families and talk about how neglect isn't deterministic, that with the right support, families can and do change. There is also mention of the Graded Care Profile 2, which is an assessment tool to help practitioners measure the quality of care a child is receiving. For more information on this, please look at the links on this podcast webpage.
Why do we think parents is an act of commission? Do they kind of parent neglectfully on purpose, or is it just they don't understand, or are they not aware, they've not got the skills? Is it a combination of everything? Sharon, what's your thoughts on that?
In my experience, I've tended to work with more families where the neglect has been unintentional and it's been around lack of their own knowledge and understanding than those where the neglect is far more intentional. That's around transparency and around families being supported to understand, that what they're doing and how they're parenting and how they were parented themselves. We know that love is unconditional, and that's one thing that I've heard from a lot of parents. They've said, but I love my child, I love my children, I couldn't neglect them. I don't know what you mean. But loving them isn't enough. It is about all of the other things. It's about being a parent, and it's about having those skills, and it's about having the availability and the willingness to work with professionals and practitioners to develop those skills. And so for me, I feel that it's far more around the lack of understanding of and the lack of parenting capacity rather than the intentional neglect.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Mandy, is that in your experience as well?
I would echo that with Sharon. Really, it is about that lack of understanding and lack of clarity on what neglect means, because we've had the stereotypical picture in our head of what it is. So when you speak to parents about neglect, they do say all of those things, but I really love my child and I do this and I do that, but actually it's not about what you do, it's what you don't do that they can't really see as neglect. They just see it as, well, I didn't do it, so why do I need to now? And I think part of that understanding as well is, even though they may say that I didn't do it, or that's the way it was done when I was a child, it's about saying to them, we've moved on. As professionals, we've got a better understanding of neglect, and we're trying to share that with people so that things can change.
What about some of the parenting vulnerabilities, Lisa? So domestic abuse and alcohol, substance misuse, does that have an impact on parents' ability to parent?
I think it certainly can. And, we set out and sort of say, parents don't set out to be bad parents generally. But some of those things that are happening for parents, so whether it's drug or alcohol misuse, whether or not there's domestic abuse, that can sometimes almost be a reason for some of the neglect. But I think it's really important to sort of set that aside, because we need to know what life's like for the child. And yes, some of these things are impacting on what life's like for the child, but we need to understand that child's life and then look at the reasons for it. And we do need to support parents who are experiencing those things, because actually if we support them to deal and to cope with what's happening in their life, we know that then will help them become better parents. but we can't lose sight of the child. You know, that's more important than those difficulties for parents.
Yeah, absolutely. So Sharon, is that what you think as well?
Yeah, I think it's really important as practitioners working with families that we understand and take the time to understand each family's journey. I think that's really important. We go in there, we don't make judgment, but we take the time to build those relationships and get to know everybody's individual circumstances. And then it's about having the skills to support parents and caregivers to then try and see their child's life through their child's eyes. So it is very much about stripping things back, isn't it? And looking at almost like this is what a day in your child's life looks like. What do you think is missing? What do you think could be done differently? What support do you think you'd need to be able to make those positive changes? And I think that really helps to get an understanding then for families of exactly what is lacking. And just going back to what's already been said, it is then about yes, you do this, you do that, and you love your child, but what isn't happening here is what's having the negative impact. So it's really about understanding each family's journey and taking that time to build the relationship and the trust. And a lot of families who are involved with services have damaged trust with services because of experiences, and that may have been experiences that they had as children or what their parents have said happened. Because we do know, in my experience, some of the families that I've worked with, they're second and third generation families on child protection plans, for instance. So they were on plans as children, and then when their parents were children, they had somebody involved with them, or it was the local policeman kept an eye on them or whatever. And I think that it's about breaking that cycle then, and until we can build the relationships and build the trust, that's never going to happen, and therefore the life chances and the experiences for children are never going to improve. So it's investment, isn't it?
Absolutely, investment in time, isn't it? That's the thing. So Maddie, from your experience, how easy is it to keep the lives of the child at the forefront when you go into some of the families I bet you're working with at the moment who are very complex? There's lots of competing things going on, and they have their own needs, don't they? We know that their inability, as you say, to put the needs of the child before their own they're not doing on purpose. They just have their own needs. So how easy is it to be able to work with parents to make sure that you see the child and that the parents see the child as well?
I think part of the process that I go through running alongside graded care profile too, well, it is after explaining it to parents what's going to happen, we also do, I do like art sessions with the children. So we're looking at, I'll get where you do the plate of food and what do you like and what do you eat and what would you wear in the winter, what would you wear? And it's all very art-based stuff. And I find that when we produce this piece of artwork that says this is what my life is like and this is how I like my life to do, when you present that to the parents, they actually it's like that secondary thing that backs up the graded care profile that you've done, and then the parents go, oh my lord, I just need to change, so very much I think alongside the graded care profile too, it's not, I don't feel that it's a tool that you go out and do with parents. You do it with the family in whatever way that can be done. And for me, it's about that art and craft sessions with the younger ones. And if it is just smudges of paper and favourite colours, so be it. You're letting them know this is how the child sees their life, and this is how the child would like their life to be. And that sometimes breaks down those barriers as well, with those professionals coming in and saying, oh, we're going to do this too, yeah. And you're like, no, we're doing it with you. And we're letting you hear your child, because your life is so chaotic that you're forgetting to hear the child's voice. And I'm just allowing you to hear the child's voice so that we can change.
Wow, that's so powerful. That is so powerful. That is a really good idea, isn't it? That you work on the logic, and this is what you're doing by using a tool such as, graded care profile 2, but also you're engaging with their emotions and their understanding of the world from their child's perspective, even if the child's language is limited, which it often is in cases of trauma, isn't it? They don't have the language to describe. But what a fantastic way of using art to kind of break that language barrier down, isn't it? That's such a great idea. And so the last bit I'd like to have a talk about, I'd like to end building on what Mandy's been saying around how you can engage with families and how you can work with families where neglect is an issue. Have you got any experiences or anything you can share, Lisa, around where you have been able to change the life course of a family, or you believe you've changed the life course by the work that you've done, and what did you do, and how did it help?
Yes, and on sort of a few occasions, it's been able to show parents in a really easy way things that they do well, because actually what we know, when parents are told the things that they do well, when we're then telling them the things that aren't going quite so well, we can sort of say, but you do this, so how can we apply it to this area? You know, what else can we do? And sort of working through the graded care tool with them to sort of say, you know, you're a 4 here, how do you think we could get to a 2? And sort of almost, it's that solution focus things, so they're coming up with their own solutions. I'm not the one saying you must do this and you must do that. It's parents and families making those decisions for themselves, coming up with the solutions themselves, effectively coming up with their own plan. You know, I'm there as a practitioner, but actually it's to support their own planning. It's to support their own planning for their future. You know, we've had parents sort of then understand the need for medical appointments, so sort of begin changing them. We have parents being able to plan their day, so that the house is in a better condition. We've had parents starting to spend some one-to-one time with children, and that could be just playing a game once a week initially, but actually what happens is the children encourage the parents more, because the children's behavior may change, because they're not sort of fighting for parents' attention, because parents are giving it naturally. The importance of working with schools. You know, schools can be a huge support for parents. We're lucky in Stockton that a lot of our schools are offer masses of things for them to access, and sometimes getting past the barrier of working with a school for parents if they've had a bad experience in school themselves, just to show that we can all come together sort of to make things
Yeah, so
better.
everybody's understanding what their role is, and everybody's supporting parents.
Yeah.
Sharon, from your experience, have you, how do you find is a really good way to work with parents? Because there's sometimes a sense of hopelessness, or there has been in the past around neglect, that these are the cases that quite often come back into child protection. You go in, you do a piece of work, things get better, you leave, and within a year, the family's back in again because of neglect. So have you any words of wisdom to kind of break that cycle?
Celebrate the positives. Just on the back of what Lisa said, it doesn't matter how dire a situation may appear, there's always something positive that you can pull out of that. And we use whole family assessments alongside the graded care profile too. And recently, some of them have been reviewed with families, and that's really important. It's about the review process as well, and giving families ownership in that review process, giving families ownership in the whole process. The assessment, the planning, the doing and the reviewing is so important. And we've heard families say, do you know what, no one's ever sat me down before and told me or shown me that I've improved. They've always said that there's always something that you could still need to change, but they've never focused on the stuff that I have changed and that I have made better. And I think that's really key. It's about pulling those positives through, because we all know ourselves, if you start a conversation with a negative, you think, oh, Okay, then, and all you hear is the negative.
Negative, yeah.
And it's about that. It's also about having those conversations with the children and the young people as well, and getting them to be engaged. You know, what Mandy was saying before, and engaging the children in demonstrating to parents what their needs are and what is good, but what needs to improve, and really breaking down the barriers with other agencies as well. You need a team of agencies around a family. It's not just down to one worker going in and putting the time in. Everybody that's involved with that child and family needs to be able to take some share of the load and do some of the work and build up and sustain the positive relationships, because when targeted services and social care pull out, those other agencies will still be involved. And if they've had positive engagement and they've been able to have conversations with families and they've been part of planning, then that will sustain the change at lower level and universal level services. But I think it's really about those subtle changes and celebrating the positives and getting the changes to routine and getting everybody singing from the same song sheet. And that's what sustains the change.
That's brilliant. Mandy, I have a feeling you've worked with lots and lots of families and you've got lots of tips to share. So have you got any tips building on what Sharon said and what Lisa said and what you said about art? I'd like you to share some of your great tips about how you engage with these chaotic families who you know want to change but find it difficult.
I know that I've worked with quite a few families, and some of them have created their challenges, shall we say. But I go back to what you said about them looking at the family's achievements. And another thing that I do, I'm probably a bit crazy and out there, but each time a family moves from a score and goes up, I get them a little certificate and I write on it, you know, you have moved to here from here. And then under, you know, the way you get the back sheet on the back with the certificate, I put all the things that they've done to move along. You know, it's not just like, oh, well, you know what, you were a 5 and now you're a 3. I go, you are now a 3. And on the back, the way you do when you get a certificate at college or uni, on the back I put, you've changed this, and there's a whole list of things. I laminate it and I take it out and I go, I usually have a little cupcake as well, just it's a celebration, isn't it? Come on. And then I take a little cupcake, can I have my certificate? And I go, I am so pleased. I have got something for you. Again, it feeds into the next bit where you then say, this is how your child feels when you spend 10 minutes reading a book. So it kind of like links back, and sometimes it's because you've read that book with the child, you can see the difference.
So what I've heard during the last hour is that actually you can still be honest and you can bring clarity, but at the same time be solution focused and build on the strengths. They're not separate. That's not as just because you're talking about neglect, it doesn't mean you're going to be negative. What you're doing is what I'm hearing is that you identify and bring clarity to what the issues are. And you say, but this is what you're doing well. This is where some of the struggles are, and this is how I'm going to work with you. And I love the idea of giving a certificate and recognise it in a really formal way. We all love a certificate, don't we? I mean, everybody loves some form of recognition, and I imagine one of Mandy's certificates is something really special to those families. And I'm sure in many years' time you'll be walking around Lime Street in Liverpool and somebody will stop you and go, I got a certificate from you back 10 years ago, whatever, which is just fantastic. So just to finish off, have you got one sentence or one thing you want to say to the listeners around the importance of neglect, or a tip you can share, or some little thing for people to take away? Because what I want to take away from me personally is, what I want to say is, neglect is not deterministic. We can be hopeful about the future for these families, and that's what I want to leave with. Mandy, have you got anything you want to say?
I would say that neglect is a scary word, but it's a word that can change lives if we work with families and not do to families, really.
Brilliant, thank you. Lisa?
A little bit similar, I suppose, to Mandy, but for me, building up relationships with families. So, you know, we need to be honest regardless, but if you can build a relationship they appreciate your honesty and take on board what you're saying, and much more open to working with you, as opposed to people kind of beating them with a big stick to say you will do this. It's about showing them what do we need to do, and supporting them to do it. That high challenge but high support.
Brilliant, that's excellent. And Sharon?
Early identification, I guess, needs to be out there as well. I do think that perhaps we do still, as professionals, think of neglect as in the same way that families often do, as the most dire situations. It's looking for those early signs to try and get in there before things do deteriorate. And that's where the importance of services like early help and early intervention services do come in. Neglect isn't just about moving families into the social care landscape. This is about catching things early and making the changes far earlier. Not only, to mean that families are not having those experiences, but to improve their experiences of working with services. Early identification is absolutely key.
That's fantastic. Any final words from anybody before we finish?
I think for me, it's about investment in time, in building relationships, and listening to people's journeys and experiences, but properly listening, not listening and assuming. It is about really investing that time to listen and understand. Neglect is a very negative word. It is a very scary word, but you can always, in the most dire situation, turn things around. People do have the ability to change with the right support. And what you might find from being in a very disempowering situation when they first start working with a service is that come the end of that intervention, that family can be empowered to not only make those changes, but to sustain them. And that will change the lives of their children.
Thanks for listening to this NSPCC Learning Podcast. At the time of recording, this episode's content was up to date, but the world of safeguarding and child protection is ever changing. So, if you're looking for the most current safeguarding and child protection training, information or resources, please visit our website for professionals at nspcc.org.uk/learning.